Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in the East. Breaking news in the cascading aftermath of the killing of 20-year-old Duante Wright by police on Sunday. Officer Kim Potter has resigned. She's the officer who fired her handgun at Wright during a traffic stop. She is a 26-year veteran of the force. Police maintain the shooting was accidental and say that Potter meant to deploy her taser, not her gun. Brooklyn Center Police Chief Tim Gannon has also stepped down, an announcement made by Mayor Mike Elliott at a press conference just this afternoon. Mayor Elliott, who last night was granted control of the police department in a vote by the city council, also addressed a swell of protest in his city. Overnight, hundreds of protesters filled the streets of Brooklyn Center for a second straight night, defying that city's 7 p.m. curfew despite the steady rain. Police confronted them in riot gear. The city of Minneapolis has become a tinderbox with the latest tragedy colliding with the murder trial of Derek Chauvin, charged in the killing nearly 11 months ago of George Floyd, just miles from where Duante Wright was shot. Today in Minneapolis, the Floyd family gathered together with the Wright family, mourning the loss of another black man at the hands of police. Another family tragically sharing in the pain of so many others who have now become advocates against police violence. Today, the grief, the anguish, and the outrage of Duante Wright's family spilling into public view.
My nephew was a lovable young man. His smile. Oh, Lord, the most beautiful smile. Y'all took that. Oh. My nephew's blood is on y'all hands.
Tell him that.
I've never seen my brother hurt like this before. Never. To hear my brother and to see my sister's pain. Come on. Hold her accountable. Hold her higher than accountable. You train people on this stuff. You train people on this stuff. 26 years. 26 years.
Veteran. Kimberly Powder. Okay. Say whatever you want to say.
Y'all took him. They need to pay. She needs to pay.
Another family, another community in anguish as calls mount for action over systemic racism in policing. This is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Carmen Best is here, retired Seattle police chief and an MSNBC law enforcement analyst. Also joining us, Washington Post contributing columnist and an MSNBC contributor, former Maryland Congresswoman Donna Edwards is back. And Jason Johnson's here, politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University and a contributor to both the GRIO and MSNBC. Carmen, I'm going to start with you. If you can just take me through today's events. How tragically we have norms. We have other incidents like this to compare this to. And in that tragic context, I want to ask you about the resignation, not just of the police officer involved, but of the police chief. Does that signal some knowledge of catastrophic failures?
Absolutely. It does signal that they recognize the severity and the tragedy of what's happened. And I don't know if it would signal to the officer ahead of time that either she was going to resign or her employment terminated. I'm not sure about the underpinnings of all that, but certainly in light of what has occurred, what has been purported to be, accidental shooting and homicide, it's just so very tragic that them stepping down does signify that the severity of the incident, and there may be others before we know it that may move on as well. But this is truly, truly tragic. And hearing his aunt's pain, the raw pain of losing her nephew and of seeing her brother and sister-in-law in such anguish is very, very hard to see. It is so very disheartening. And we absolutely know that there's going to be the justice hopefully will be served, but there also will be some good outcomes about how we move forward in policing.
What is, in your mind, the plausibility of mistaking your gun for your taser?
I can't put a number on it, definitive. I will say this: it just feels really inexplicable when so many people, so many officers who carry tasers, and I've actually interviewed and talked to some on my own because I can't understand how the taser is designed to be very different than the sidearm or firearm. It's much lighter in weight. Many agencies have tasers that are like green or yellow or gold, a different color. Officers usually don't carry them on the same side that they carry their weapon, so that you use one hand to reach for your gun and a different hand to use for your taser. And that's a recommended practice of training. And so it's really inexplicable as to what happened, if there was just a mental breakdown or what was going on there. Certainly, I don't have the answer to that, but it is highly, highly, highly rare and unusual for that type of mistake to be made.
Donna, Jason, we've all tragically been on the air together for too many of these conversations. And so I just want to ask you first, Donna, what are your thoughts today on this story, achingly similar, with all the structural problems really in place that we talk about every single time a family has to publicly grieve, like Dante's family had to do today?
Yeah, Nicole, as I was listening to the pain and feeling the pain of this mom and aunt, and hearing their pain that we've heard so many times before, and a friend of mine wrote me last night that how dare she have the audacity to be a Black woman giving birth to Black male children in this world. And I feel that same audacity and vanity given what we all see too many times in America, and wondering how and when it's going to change. I don't know that I have an answer for that, even as we're in the midst of the Derek Chauvin trial, just miles away from Brooklyn Center. And so it is that pain that takes away something from each one of us, not to mention the pain of that one grieving family.
And very much along those lines, Jason, I read your Twitter feed, and I'm going to let you hold forth, but let me just put out there for our viewers a statement from the President and Mrs. Obama. They put out this today: "Our hearts are heavy over yet another shooting of a Black man, Duante Wright, at the hands of police. The fact that this could happen even as the city of Minneapolis is going through the trial of Derek Chauvin and reliving the heart-wrenching murder of George Floyd indicates not just how important it is to conduct a full and transparent investigation, but also just how badly we need to reimagine policing and public safety in this country." Jason?
I've been saying we need to abolish American policing as it currently exists. It doesn't work. And we don't seem to have this sort of difficulty when we're talking about any other government agency. So, Nicole, I teach my class of Morgan State students before this. We were having this discussion with a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds. And I pointed out to them, I said, what's the graduation rate for high school kids in Baltimore? And the Baltimore graduation rate is only about 80%. People are always screaming, oh my gosh, Baltimore public schools are terrible. They need to be taken over by the state. They need to be taken over by the government. Only 80% of these kids graduate. You know, the average homicides that are actually solved by police departments, only about 35%. You know the number of rapes and sexual assaults that are solved by police departments? Less than 60%. You know the percentage likelihood of being shot unarmed as a Black person is like 5 times as likely than a white person. Policing doesn't work the way we're doing it right now. And if we had that level of endemic failure in any other government agency, every politician in America would say, not just reimagine, we need to tear this down to the studs and rebuild it. And anything less than that is absolute gaslighting to the tears that this woman was expressing. I am tired of people saying this is a tragedy. We've known it was a tragedy, and no one's doing anything about it. And whether it's a mass shooting in a public school or another Black man or another Black woman, and I promise you, Nicole, because before this trial is over, I said this when the Derek Chauvin trial began. I was like, we're going to have another shooting before this trial is over. And we have one. If the trial goes another 2 weeks, we'll have another shooting. So we need to start thinking of a different way to approach policing. And if we don't have that conversation, then no one cares about crying tears and no one cares about blood in the streets, because anything else is just window dressing.
Well, and Carmen, I think that to Jason's point, we do have the same conversation every time this kind of tragedy is caught on cell phone video and erupts into public view. And sadly, that's the variable, because I'm sure there are more incidents that simply aren't propelled to the public consciousness by video. And I guess I'm old enough to remember when one of the solutions was going to be body cam video. Well, here we are. There's body cam video and it's still happening. What is the solution?
Right. Yeah, you know, it's really interesting because I agree that we need to start over. It's really funny that we're kind of saying the same thing in different ways. I just think that everything has to have some structure to it. I don't believe in just tearing things down without a game plan, without a real remedy as to how to move forward to make it better. And in fact, when George Floyd was murdered, one of the things that I thought was going to be the most difficult was we'd have, you know, rallies and riots and, you know, gatherings and conversations, and yet there would be another incident where we haven't moved the needle, you know, at all in policing. And so I think we do need to move the needle. We do need to change things. I say reimagine rather than abolish, because I do think there is a need for a structure or some sort of form of public safety, simply because, you know, I've been around enough to see enough people victimized by other people, not just cops, but other people, that I know that there is a need for something in place to keep society safe and moving and functioning in a fair and effective manner. And if we don't, if what we have now isn't working, fine, let's look at other things. But let's have a plan in place. Let's have a real answer and a solution. Let's pilot something. Let's try this out, because the risks are too high if we don't get it right, and the risks are too high if we maintain the status quo. So I think that there's a real opportunity here to really get strong voices and then strong action behind those voices. And I think you would find that a lot of people in law enforcement, a lot of police officers would love to see a system where they could feel consistently proud of the work that they're doing and the effort that they're giving, and not have the bad incidents tear the whole thing down and show that there are real problems that need to be addressed.
There was a new incident brought to our attention by newly released video on Sunday, Donna, and I saw it and sent it around to my team that was reporting in the New York Times. It's an incident that happened in Virginia, in Windsor, Virginia. I wanted to just give some context for our viewers. The actual incident, the encounter with police and another black man, this one an Army lieutenant, happened December 5th. But there's a lawsuit that sort of precipitated the video being released. Windsor's town manager, that's the city where it happened, that's the police force involved, said in a statement that an internal investigation found that the officers who pulled over Lieutenant Karen Nazario, Joe Gutierrez, and Daniel Crocker did not follow departmental policy. We're back to policies and structural problems with policing. According to the police department, they've been disciplined in order to take additional training, but only after this happened. Let's watch.
Lightning, son. Get out the car. You received an order. Obey it.
I'm honestly afraid to get out. Can I?
Yeah, you should be. Get out. Back up.
Whoa, hold on.
Daniel.
What's going? Hold on.
Get out of the car.
What's going on?
Get out of the car now.
What's going on?
What's going on is you're fixing to ride the lightning, son.
Get out the car.
You received an order. Obey it.
I'm honestly afraid to get out. Can I?
Yeah, you should be. Get out. Back up.
Whoa, hold on.
Daniel.
What's going? Hold on. I don't. What?
And 4 OC just deployed.
Get out of the car and get on the ground now. You're going to get it again.
I don't even want to reach for my seatbelt.
Take your seatbelt off and get out of the car.
So for our viewers, just to know, this gets worse from here. And Carmen, if you could just put this into context, what in the ever-loving universe is any of that conduct in line with the way you treat anyone? 2 hands out the window. Obviously someone that represents no threat to the police officers. Can you add some understanding?
Right. I really wish I could. It's absolutely ridiculous what was occurring there. A man in military uniform, clearly is explaining in very clear terms why he's nervous, and obviously so. And the officer said something to the effect of, well, you should be, and you're about to ride the lightning, son. I mean, anybody would be afraid with people pointing handguns at you, yelling those things. And when he asked, what the problem was, if it was his tags on his vehicle, just say, it's your tags on your vehicle. We'd like to talk to you about it. I mean, it's really such a minor nothing that it's just hard to believe that all of this transpired out of this incident. It's a completely reprehensible. And so the actions that were taken, I believe both officers, the point of employment has been terminated, if I'm correct, but it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And this is why we have the problems that we have today, because these incidents occur. I, of course, believe that the vast majority of incidents do not end up like this, but one is just too many. And it's very appalling. We've had 3 this week already.
Well, and Donna, I guess my point in bringing this into the conversation is that, thank God, Lieutenant Nazario didn't pay with his life. But the escalation on the part of police is the universal, I think, distinguishing sort of trait in everything that we talk about. That's where these things seem to diverge between, dare I say, how I would maybe get treated and how a black man gets treated. And my question is, what can the federal government do? What can the Biden administration do now so that doesn't happen tomorrow and the next day? Because I hear what Jason's saying about starting over, but this is a problem now. We're playing whack-a-mole every single day.
Well, and Nicole, these are the ones that we see, and think about how many incidents may be happening all over the country that we don't see. This was precisely the opposite of the de-escalation that we've all been talking about over these last couple of years. There is now an investigation coming out of both the state police and the Attorney General's office in Virginia. But also, I think that the Department of Justice has to get really re-engaged again about looking at pattern and practice investigations of police departments across the country. And as we can see, Windsor, Virginia, a very small police department, Minneapolis, larger, Brooklyn Center in between. It doesn't matter the size of the department. It apparently doesn't even matter the training because the training is violated so much. So, I mean, I point to Maryland, my home state, which over this last week passed very sweeping reforms in criminal justice and in policing. And it's the first state to really do so at that level. And we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that these incidents don't happen again. But to Jason's point, it's so widespread that it is inevitable until we get control over it.
Jason, I'll give you the last word.
There is a process that the federal government can engage in right now. They can collect some of the data, which was started in the Obama administration, slowed in the Trump administration, use of force. They can make an assessment of use of force. Departments that appear to have too much use of force, you strengthen consent decrees. You come in, you say these people who have engaged in this behavior, you will lose all of your federal funding if these people are not fired. This is a breakdown as to what this police department does on a regular basis. You're only dealing with violent crime 15% of the time, so you only need to have 15% of your force officers prepared for that. The rest of this is traffic stuff. Increase the number of cops who handle traffic. They don't necessarily have to have guns. Increase the amount of social workers that you have so that you don't have cops negotiating domestic violence instances. There are plans out there. There are things the federal government can do. This is a lack of will on the part of an administration, not a lack of ideas and not a lack of resources.
Carmen Bass, thank you for being part of this conversation and starting us off this hour. We're grateful for you. Donna and Jason are sticking around.